This is The Artificial Man by Clare Winger Harris, published in the 1929 issue of Science Wonder Quarterly magazine, narrated by ElevenLabs digital audio voice Anna Rita 2. The thread snaps. When David Bell regained consciousness, he was lying in his bed. The bright sunlight shining through the curtains made delicate traceries across the counterpane. His first thought was that this was heaven by contrast to the events of his last conscious moments. Surely that was an angel hovering above him. No, at least not in the ethereal sense, but an angel nevertheless. For it was Rosalind, her sweet face beaming with love and solicitude. "Mr. Stevens and I have been watching by your side for hours, David dear," she said as she placed a cool hand upon his brow. "You have him to thank for saving your life, not only at the time of the attack, but during the uncertain hours that have followed." David turned grateful eyes toward his rescuer. "Tell me about it, Lucius," he said quietly. Stevens seated himself in a chair by the bedside and proceeded with this narrative. "After that demon you called Gregory ordered me from the room, Dr. Bell, I turned over in my mind what had better be done to save you from his vengeance. I thought it advisable to say nothing at the time to Mrs. Bell because I did not wish to alarm her unnecessarily. But I knew that when I forced entrance into the room, it must be with adequate assistance and within a very short period of time. I made my way to the office as quickly as I could without arousing suspicion. Miss Cullis was at the desk. Knowing I could rely on her natural calmness of demeanour and self-possession, I told her briefly of the danger which threatened you. Then I phoned police headquarters. Before 10 minutes were over, Copeland and Knowles had arrived armed with automatics and crowbars. I carried an axe. Cautiously we made our way to the door of the operating room and stood without, listening. We heard no sounds of voices, and Copeland wanted to force entrance immediately, but I held him in temporary restraint. I wanted to obtain some cue as to conditions on the other side of the door before taking drastic measures. But thanks to Copeland's impatience, we broke down the door and saw, I shall never forget the sight till my dying day, that fiend of hell with his talons gripping your throat. He was evidently somewhat deaf, for he heard no motion of our approach. We closed in on him from the rear, but he swung around with such force in that left arm that we all went down like 10 pins. Knowles, as soon as he was on his feet again, struck him several times with the bar, but his efforts were wasted, for he might as well have rained blows upon a stone wall. Copeland aimed for his head, in which he knew was encased a mortal brain, but that blow was avoided by the monster's ever-active legs and arms. I was reserving my axe for a telling stroke when it came upon me with a sudden clarity of understanding that the man governed his movements by manipulating the fingers of his right hand upon a place of control at his breast. His right arm and the switchboard, these were the vulnerable parts. At last I had found the heel of Achilles. While Gregory was occupied with his other 2 antagonists, I dealt a sudden stroke with the axe at his right hand, but missed, the weapon falling heavily upon his chest. My first emotion was disappointment at having missed my mark, but in another second I realized that the blow had disabled him. The left arm hung useless at his side, but what prowess it lacked was made up in the increased activity of the legs. He ran, and never have I seen such speed. He would have made Atalanta resemble a snail. However, 3 against 1 put the odds too heavily in our favour. Between lurches and thrusts at the flying figure, I managed to convey to the 2 policemen my discovery in regard to his mortal points, and we soon had his trusty right arm disabled. The rest was comparatively easy. We dismembered him. We did not want to kill him, but it was soon apparent to us that the damage done to the control board would prove fatal. He wanted to speak, but his voice was faint, and stooping I could barely get the words. "Tell David," he said, "that I've been wrong, dead wrong ever since I was carried off the field in that football game. I had been right at first. Mental perfection does make the physical harmonious, and with the right mental attitude after that accident, I could have risen above the physical handicap. It was not the physical loss of my leg that brought me to this. It was the mind that allowed it to do so. Tell David and Rosalind I am sorry for the past, and I wish them much happiness for the future." Those were his last words. David Bell and his wife looked at each other with tear-dimmed eyes. Next day, the slender thread which had held George Gregory to this world was laid in its last resting place. But the soul which had realized and repented of its error, who knows whither it went?